Hello. Sorry for the crappy lighting. It was sunny, but suddenly just clouds came. So I'm going to do a book-movie comparison. So I'm going to be comparing Upton Sinclair's Oil to the highly acclaimed movie by Paul Thomas Anderson, There Will Be Blood. Whee! Both of these narratives involve the oil industry, and also they both take place in California in the early 20th century. The main characters are a man and his son, and they're building up their oil business. And I think in that sense the similarities start to stop. Paul Thomas Anderson, he was planning on writing a movie about, I think around the same time period, about two families feuding. He was really struggling with this screenplay, and then he found Upton Sinclair's Oil, and it totally inspired him, and he thought, I'll just do a movie about this. And so he started writing the screenplay for the movie, and then as he was writing, he realized that the screenplay he was writing for this book started to get pretty different. So they actually changed the name of the movie from Oil to There Will Be Blood, because, as I'll describe, it gets really different. So let's just start with the main characters. The main character in the movie, his name is Daniel Plainview. In the book, his name is Arnold J. Ross. In the movie, the son's name is H.W. You don't really know what H.W. stands for, but in the book, his name is Arnold J. Ross Jr., but everyone calls him Bunny because his mother thought that he looked like a little bunny when he was a baby in a little sweater, and it's like, oh, he's so cute. Bunny! The name actually works for him in the book. But the first names of the brothers, I guess, of the religious family, are kind of the same. In the movie, the family that he buys the land from is named the Sundays, but in the book they named the Watkises, and but both brothers are named Paul and Eli. The main differences in this book and the movie are that the main character, or the main cast of characters, the characters that the movie really focuses on, in the book are really more so side characters. The movie is more of a character study of Daniel Plainview as a character, and it just shows his determination and his real, like, dark, gritty passion to succeed in his drive in this oil setting. In the book, first off, Bunny is the main character, and there are many times in the book where the father is just in the background. The father in the book is very different. He is not as hard. You can actually feel sorry for him many times. Another difference is, in the movie, the first brother that came to alert Daniel Plainview, Paul, about the oil, in the book, actually, Paul is a big character, and he's a big influence on Bunny. This is the first time that Bunny has actually met someone who was so honest and not money driven, and so even though he doesn't see him for a long time, Paul as a figure really makes a big impact on him. The Eli character, he is very, very small. He's younger. He eventually, you can tell he gets very passionate about religion, and he believes that he has orders from God. Religion is kind of like a really side thing, and it never really goes into contention with the messages that is going around in the novel. Another interesting character is that, like in the movie, when you see like they're doing the business dealings and where they're at the desk, and then there's that other guy at his other desk, and you know, obviously he's doing all the things that the son can't do, because even though the father and the son, they're partners, but the son, you know, he can't, you know, balance the checkbook and all that kind of stuff. So the other business partner, I think that character is based off of the character in the book, Vernon Roscoe. And actually in the book, Vernon Roscoe is the closest thing you can find to an antagonist in the whole book. So that is another big thing. Where the book completely diverges is you see Bunny growing up. Bunny, he's being brought up by his father, and his father truly believes in capitalism and the free market, and it starts off where you understand his perspective, because the father, he started out poor, he worked hard, and now that he is successful, he chooses to use his influence to help workers. He gives really big tips. He says, you know what, it's hard for those guys, I'm gonna help them in any way I can. He sympathizes with workers' rights, because he remembers how it is and he's very close to working with all these oil workers. But then also he kind of bends the rules at times because he doesn't trust the government, because he feels that it's so inefficient, and because it's able to be bribed to make efficiencies. Like, you can't trust the government, that's why we have to do things ourselves in a few illegal ways. The book is told from Bunny's perspective, in the sense that the way he's only getting his father's input and his father's opinion and his father's side of things. So of course Bunny is just so dewy-eyed and he trusts his father and everything, so he understands his father's side. But then when he meets Paul, who eventually becomes a pretty big communist, and he understands the other side. And so as Bunny is growing up, he has these two opposing thoughts in his head. You know, on one side he understands his father that, you know, business needs to survive so that workers can have jobs and that they can support their families, and you know, that is one thing businesses are good for. But on the other side, Bunny sees the side of Paul in which they're talking about if a business is abusing its workers, if it's not giving them a decent wage, if it's not giving them decent hours, why shouldn't workers have more say and more rights to unionize? Throughout most of the novel, you keep seeing him as like this cute little bunny, and the name really works in the sense that really naive, and he is just growing up and he's constantly shocked about finding out the realities of the world outside of his father's influence. His father's not purposely misleading him, but that is just what his father believes, and that's what his father has experienced in his bubble of existence. Bunny is just looking at more experiences, and this book is more of like also an exploration of privilege. Conveniently, he notices that he never actually gets in trouble for doing the same exact things that other people who are less advantaged than him, they get in trouble for it like at the drop of a hat. And so he's just slowly realizing that he's incredibly privileged, and that it's really not fair for him to have so many advantages over other people who work so much harder than him. I want to back up a little bit, but right off the bat, the beginnings of each narrative is very, very different. The beginning of the book starts with a completely paved road, and they're driving and they're talking about traffic cops and how soon it should be illegal that traffic cops can hide and just, you know, ticket people that are just driving by, that they need to be visible. And so you get a bigger sense that it's not as rural and it's not as raw as the movie portrays it to be. They have paved roads, they have public education, like the Watkises, they homeschool their children so they're poor, but it's not like they couldn't send their children to public school. In the beginning of the movie, how it shows how they originally drilled for oil, it never actually happened that way. It was a lot more sophisticated, but I think that whole method really worked for the movie to really be consistent with the theme of really raw driven characters, like the main character of Danny Plainview in the movie. This book is a lot more than just, you know, a character study, and in that sense I think that it made sense that the movie was very, very stripped down. They took out a lot of those themes and they really stripped it down, so it made sense that the setting of the movie was actually, I would say, 20 years earlier than the setting of the book, and it was just a lot more raw and stripped down when you take out all of those themes and you really hyper-focused in on the character of the father. I see hints of the book in the movie, and it's like after reading the book it's kind of really exciting because like, oh, like you see like someone walk by and it's like, that must be that character who was like really big in the book. The movie in a sense is almost a negative of the book because the characters that are central to the book take a really big backseat in the movie. You know, of course, Paul is really big in the book, but then in the movie he only appears once. Eli is really big in the movie, but he really never butts head with the father at all. He appears maybe like 3 times in the book where you kind of see him and you see he has his own arc. I think a lot of people were expecting the movie to be very much like the book, because right now we are kind of surprised if we see original screenplays, and something so rich and like raw and dynamic as There Will Be Blood, I think some people are like, of course it's based on the book. All those things can't be so original, it had to be originally written as in a book form. But a lot of the things that happen in There Will Be Blood are really original. there is, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but there is no brother subplot in the book at all. I mean, it didn't have any like time for that. You can see the influences, but they are two different beasts, and I highly recommend both of them. I haven't read Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, but I will hopefully read that soon. Soon isn't a subjective word, isn't it? I do really love both of these, but this one has a lot more to say about society, and I think Upton Sinclair, he lived in California for a while, and a lot of these events are based on real things that he saw. So he hints at the Teapot Dome scandal, how Hollywood was complicit in propaganda against, you know, communism. It touched on like the beginnings of the Red Scare, you know, police brutality. But an interesting thing is, at the end of the book, someone is bludgeoned in the head. So in that sense, I think it's similar. But by the end, it really isn't. Yeah, they become completely different narratives. The movie is more of a character study, while the book is more of an examination of capitalism, communism, corruption, greed, and privilege. That is my rambly comparison. I really want to drink a milkshake. I'm finished! Let's do a milkshake.